Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into a strategy that honestly feels like a radical contradiction, especially in high finance, and digital assets.
Right.
Everything, absolutely everything, tells us speed is king. Acceleration, that's the only path to profit, or so we hear. Yet our sources today, they introduce us to the Metallicus Advantage, and it seems to champion the exact opposite. Strategic patience.
It's a fascinating pivot, isn't it?
It really is. We're talking about a commitment to long-term sustainable development. And this is happening within the, let's face it, highly volatile world of digital asset banking and blockchain tech.
Yeah, not exactly known for taking it slow.
Not at all. Okay, let's unpack this then. How can a philosophy of waiting possibly be the most aggressive strategic move, especially in a sector where, your competitive edge is often defined by who moves fastest?
That's really the core paradox we need to sort of solve for you, the learner, today. Our mission is to analyze how adopting an independent timeline becomes, not just an option, but a core strategic imperative.
Yeah.
Especially for certain assets.
Okay.
The sources, they really emphasize that true sustainable growth is, and I quote, meticulously developed. It's engineered, not just something that pops up from market hype.
That immediately makes me think, though, if you're in the digital asset space, a competitor can launch a protocol, maybe a whole new product, in like 6 months, right?
Right.
Completely resets the playing field.
Sure, it happens.
So why would you deliberately choose a slow path? We really need to understand how this strategy translates into, actual measurable resilience and long-term value, especially when the market's just screaming for those quick, rapid returns.
It's a really powerful challenge, that question. And the answer, I think, starts with defining the goal. What are they actually building? They aren't building short-term trading tools, you see. They're building the foundational architecture for what they call the digital banking network and that kind of thing. It requires engineering, serious engineering.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's dig into section 1 then. Engineering the independent timeline. Walk us through what that actually means. When the sources talk about Metallicus core assets operating on their own distinct timeline, what assets are we talking about? Specific tokens? Or is it deeper?
It's deeper. We're talking about proprietary tech infrastructure, foundational financial products built for longevity. These are the gears of their operation, basically.
The gears.
Yeah, think back to that image in the sources, you remember. The one of the mechanical gears working, suggesting precision.
Yeah.
But right next to them, there's a strong growing tree.
I do remember that image, yeah.
Kind of an analogy, right? For long-term organic growth, but growth that's also mechanically reliable, let's develop.
Okay, so if the asset is this core infrastructure operating on an independent timeline, that means protecting it from external pressures. How does that insulation work in practice?
It's a very deliberate, strategic choice. It's designed specifically to insulate these core assets from those transient market pressures that tend to dictate daily results for everyone else.
So avoiding knee-jerk reactions.
Exactly. Think about it. If you rush the architecture of, a new banking network just to meet some quarterly earnings call, you're almost certainly going to introduce flaws, maybe systemic ones.
Right, bad foundation.
Precisely. So this insulation, it's built on 3 pillars, according to the source material. First, they use what they call strategic development cycles. These cycles are comprehensive. They're custom tailored to the asset's specific engineering needs, which means they're absolutely not dictated by external timeline.
Not the usual financial calendar or crypto hype cycles.
Definitely not. They set their own clock.
Which I imagine takes enormous internal discipline, especially when you see competitors maybe achieving huge valuations overnight, purely based on hype.
Oh, absolutely. Tremendous discipline. And that allows for the second pillar, insulation from volatility.
Okay.
By sticking strictly to that internal schedule, they protect the asset from the crazy short-term market swings you see in blockchain. And the result is growth that's, more stable, more predictable, because it's based on hitting internal milestones, not market mood swings.
Hold on. I want to push on that a bit. For you, the listener, maybe you're involved in tech development, maybe finance. Insulation sounds great, sure. But doesn't it create a huge opportunity cost?
How so?
Well, if they take, say, 3 years to build a feature that a competitor maybe pushes out in 6 months, aren't they just basically conceding market share? Giving it away?
That's the critical trade-off, absolutely. And the sources argue pretty strongly that the long-term payoff is foundational strength. That's the third pillar.
Okay, foundational strength.
Yeah. The extended timeline allows for a much deeper focus on foundational strength. They're building with resilience, with longevity, baked in from the start.
The building to last.
Exactly. If you're building something meant to last for decades in the digital banking sphere, you absolutely have to prioritize architecture that can withstand paradigm shifts, not just ride the current trends.
So the implication then, for you listening, is that while the rest of the world is hitting the accelerator, these core assets are specifically being cultivated with a long-term vision. They've picked stability as their kind of aggressive path.
That's a great way to put it, yes. And that shift in how we see it leads us neatly into Section 2, patience as an active strategic component.
Okay.
This is where we stop thinking about patience as just, a passive virtue, something nice to have, and start seeing it as an active operational framework. For Metallicus, patience isn't just a soft quality. It's an active, essential piece of the strategic engine driving every big decision.
Right. Let's see how that strategic patience turns into actual principles then, the real work. How do they operationalize this refusal to rush?
It really shows up in their disciplined execution,
Yeah.
especially in how they handle market noise. The sources point this out in 3 specific ways. First is thoughtful decision-making.
Okay.
They explicitly prioritize really thorough analysis, deliberation, over just reacting quickly. Any decision has to contribute long-term value, not just put out a fire or satisfy some short-term urge. Second, there's a fierce resistance to short-term pressures. They actively, intentionally resist that temptation to just succumb to the market noise, the FOMO, the pressure to match whatever a competitor just announced. They keep this laser focus on intrinsic value, on future potential, often completely against the tide of public opinion at that moment.
That's really interesting, because it must force them to make some pretty counterintuitive calls. They must have internal policies that basically reject external validation sometimes.
Seems like it, yes. And that feeds directly into the third point, cultivating sustainable growth.
Right.
Their goal isn't just rapid growth, the kind that often leads to those massive corrections later.
Yeah, the boom and bust.
Exactly. Their aim is growth that's also sustainable, enduring. This kind of disciplined development model, it's a direct counterargument to those boom-bust cycles we see so often in fast-moving tech sectors.
Okay. Here's where it gets really interesting for me. This disciplined execution, this almost weaponization of slow development, what are the actual tangible rewards? How does it pay off?
Well, the whole approach is really a testament to the power of strategic foresight, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's this calculated, disciplined model that essentially says, look, we understand the huge long-term potential of digital finance, and we refuse to compromise the foundation just for a short-term win. That discipline, that patience, that becomes the cornerstone of their success, because it means they aren't just chasing ghosts or hype.
That distinction feels absolutely key. Okay, let's pivot now. Section 3, stakeholder value and of the huge digital context they're operating in. For you, the listener, what are the concrete, maybe quantifiable benefits of trusting this slower, more deliberate philosophy?
The sources are actually exceptionally clear on this. They point to 3 key benefits that come from this patient pace. Number 1, enhanced stability.
Stability. Okay.
Assets developed on their own protected internal timeline. They naturally show greater stability, greater predictability, because their value is tied more closely to hitting development milestones, not just speculation. Number 2, maximize long-term value. This deliberate, unhurried pace gives assets the time they actually need to mature, to integrate properly, to optimize. It maximizes their ultimate realized value years down the line.
Like letting the tree grow deep roots before you measure its height.
Exactly that analogy again. It fits perfectly.
Okay. And number 3.
And crucially, number 3, reduced risk exposure. By actively mitigating the impact of those short-term market fluctuations, essentially by tuning out the daily noise, their whole approach inherently reduces the overall risk profile of the network they're building.
Okay. Now, we absolutely have to connect this back to the specific sector they're in. Metallicus is defined very clearly as the digital banking network. They're focused on building a customer-centric digital asset banking network using blockchain.
Right.
This is an arena defined by acceleration, by speed. So why is this patient approach not just helpful, but maybe mandatory for success here?
Well, I think it's because the sheer volatility, the speed of innovation in these emerging technologies like AI and blockchain, it fundamentally changes the game.
How so?
Look at the context from their CEO, Marshall Hayner. He suggests AI and blockchain are about to change finance like the internet changed everything else.
Wow, okay, that's a big statement.
Huge. And it implies a complete structural upheaval is coming, not just incremental changes.
Okay, but if the underlying technology is changing at internet speed, maybe even faster, How does waiting protect you from obsolescence? Wouldn't speed be necessary just to keep up?
But see, if you rush your infrastructure today just to integrate, say, the flavor of the month AI feature or the trendiest new blockchain protocol,
Yeah.
you might be building on sand. The independent timeline, the patient approach, ensures that when a real technological paradigm shift hits, and it will, their core foundational architecture is robust enough to adapt, to integrate the change properly, rather than being built around the current, maybe temporary technology.
So it's about building adaptability into the foundation itself.
Exactly. This is critical. Long-term patience in this digital context. It might be the only way to build technology that's truly designed for decades of structural financial change. It lets them focus on the really hard stuff: security, scalability, regulatory robustness, rather than just chasing market cap based on the latest hype.
That really brings us to the core takeaway, doesn't it? The Metallicus approach seems to define success not by speed, but by, well, stability, foundational strength, and this deliberate respect for the inherent timeline of growth, especially when you're building for massive structural change.
Well said.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? I think it means choosing calculated, rigorous development over those quick wins, over immediate gratification. They're really compelling, practical argument that in a world just obsessed with acceleration, sometimes the most aggressive, the most resilient strategy is the one that simply refuses to be rushed by all those external pressures.
And that leads us right into our final thought, something for you to consider, building directly on this whole idea of the independent timeline.
Okay.
If true resilience, if real long-term value, inherently requires operating on a self-defined schedule, how can individuals, how can organizations apply this principle, this strategic patience, in their own lives, maybe their own businesses?
That's a tough question.
It is. How do you maintain that focus on foundational strength, on intrinsic value, when your inbox, your newsfeed, the whole accelerating pace of tech change driven by AI, it's constantly trying to pull you into the short-term panic or the short-term excitement?
Right, resisting the noise.
Exactly. That independent timeline, it's a strategic choice. It's available to everyone, theoretically, but it's incredibly difficult to actually execute in practice. You need to really mull over.